CNC Movie Breakdowns, Episode 5, The Shining.
Nope.
What?
It's episode 6.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, wow.
Episode 6, The Shining.
Our Lee special.
Start again. 3, 2, 1, go. Hi, this is Nando from CNC Commentaries, and you're listening to CNC Movie Breakdowns. In this episode, we will be going over the 1980 horror movie, The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. And I'm, of course, joined by my co-host, Chase.
Hi. Hello. Didn't see that.
How you doing, Chase?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited to talk about this movie.
Yes, your favorite movie of all time.
My favorite movie. Whenever people ask me that famous question, what's your favorite movie of all time? This is my go-to.
This is the one you give them.
And, we don't have to get into my whole backstory on all that on this episode, but it's a funny thing, because I'm not even really a big horror guy, and then just something about this movie, when I was like, it just struck me, and I was like, yeah, that's the one.
This is it?
Yeah.
All right. So, this movie is based on a Stephen King novel. I should say loosely based on a Stephen King novel, where a writer and his family are isolated in a haunted hotel for 5 months, and this movie is about the falling apart of this family, and especially the father, Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson's descent into insanity.
Practically.
Yep.
You would describe it like that. I'd describe it as a loving family tale about a nice family that spends a lovely winter up in the mountains. But I guess everyone has their own views on what they see in it.
Everybody does. So yes. Why don't we dive right into this one, Chase?
I think we should get into. We should talk about our initial thoughts.
Oh yeah.
I guess we'll start with you because this was your first time.
This is my first time watching The Shining.
You absolute madman.
So, this was an interesting one because I had previously watched Stanley Kubrick movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I really liked those movies. But in this one, the first thing that stood out to me was Stanley Kubrick's direction. I mean, all the different shots in this movie, the way the actors are directed, it stands out. It's really good. I thought this movie was pretty good overall. Definitely has a lot of iconic shots, a lot of iconic lines, iconic scenes. And also, this is where the steady cam was invented.
Not invented, but
revolutionized.
Yeah, those tracking shots that followed Danny on his big wheel.
Oh, sweet trike, dude. It's definitely, and the story is also very interesting. It's a ghost story with murder. Those were my initial thoughts on this movie.
A ghost story with murder.
What about you, Chase?
Well, I've seen this a few times, believe it or not. The first time I saw this, I was like 12, I think. So a few years ago. If you're trying to figure that out along at home, that was 4 to 5 years ago for me. And when I initially saw this movie, I wasn't scared by it. I don't really get scared by most horror movies. But when I first saw this, I was so much more focused on the technical aspects, like the direction and everything, then I think I was focused on that stuff more than the story. Which is fitting because this is like this is one of the movies that got me into movies and making movies. And yeah, I watch this at least probably twice a year, yeah. And it's just every time I go back and watch it, I pick up little things, and it's just for some reason it's pretty quotable, like endlessly quotable for me.
Yeah.
Like there'll be times where like I'll just be working on something, and then if someone comes in, I'll be like, "You're ruining my concentration."
Yeah, that's happened. That's definitely happened, but you definitely quote this movie. Even like before, I didn't really understand where you were getting that line from, but now I do.
Wow, what a small world.
Small world.
Well, I guess let's dive on into this blood-filled elevator.
Yeah, let's dive on in. So, just walk us through the opening scene on this movie.
This opening scene, I love it so much, and it's beautiful, but also haunting. We're opening on these aerial shots of the Colorado landscape, and you just got this like scenic blue sky and the trees, and then you get this right off the bat, this haunting score, which is one of my favorite elements of the movie. I think it's something we both appreciate a lot in this.
Yeah.
And it's the score is done by Wendy Carlos, and it's so good. It's haunting and captivating, and it's just from those first opening lines, it's like, oh wait, that sounded like Star Wars. That it's great. It's great. From the opening credits of this movie, you're getting into something amazing.
Yes. So, yeah, like you said, the score is, yeah, as I actually said while we were watching the movie, I was like, wow, the score is pretty haunting. It definitely gets to you, this score. It's very good at setting the mood.
I mean, in this whole time, we're just following this yellow car.
Yeah.
This bug, I think, and just following along, and then we just get these light blue credits, and it's.
Yeah, it's really great.
They're really beautiful aerial shots.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get this shot of the hotel.
This hotel.
And it's that exterior shot that they have. That's the actual like hotel that the film is based off. Oddly enough, it's called the Stanley Hotel in real life. I think even before this was made, it was called the Stanley Hotel. And then of course, the interior of the hotel was a different hotel.
Yes. And that was quite interesting to me. Because, the inside of the hotel is kind of like a maze.
And that's done very intentionally.
Uh-huh. And the inside of the hotel is like a maze. It's supposed to be that way. But you realize throughout when you're watching this movie that the inside of this hotel is not physically possible from the outside shots that we've been shown.
Like early on when he goes in to talk to Ullman, and Ullman's sitting at his desk and Jack's sitting across from him, and you see that window behind him, and then we get the rest of the layout of the hotel later, and you're like, in location to where that office should be and where it says it is, there cannot be a window there to the outside. It plays on this idea of the hotel is a maze and the hedge maze later. And I even love that in that little scene of like that beginning interview. It's if you look at Jack's tie, the pattern on it looks like the hedge maze.
Yeah, it's very good. All right, well, why don't we go in? Then we're introduced to our characters. Why don't you?
Yes.
Why don't you go into that, Chase?
Well, we meet the Torrance family. Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson. Wendy Torrance, played by Shelley Duvall. And Danny Torrance, played by little Danny Lloyd. I mean, we talked about it briefly, but this Jack's going in for this like interview at the hotel because they need a caretaker. And what do you think about this scene?
I think it was definitely interesting because so the hotel needs a caretaker because the last caretaker kind of had a bad experience.
You could say that.
So then they're talking, and our main character, like the father of the family, Jack Torrance, he seems like a nice guy. He seems like a regular guy. So he's just talking, and he's like cracking jokes. He's doing well.
For now.
He's doing well for now, and he's just walking around the hotel with the guy that's going to give him the job, and he's just running through his responsibilities, and we meet another character, the head cook. Chase, what can you tell us about this head cook?
Well, I mean, I also want to say, like, during that interview and, like, he's telling him background about the hotel, we get a lot of important information about the previous caretaker, Grady, who killed his daughters and wife and then killed himself. And then, it's just, and then Jack is talking about, well, that surely won't happen here, and just want some peace and quiet to work on my book. And it's, as we know later, that is, things go the other way.
Yeah, things are kind of wacky in this hotel. A little goofy.
Then we meet, Wendy and Danny. And, while Danny is he's brushing his teeth, he has these visions.
Yeah, he has a vision, and he sees an elevator.
And what's that elevator full of?
Blood.
No, trick question. It's Kool-Aid.
It's just red Kool-Aid. So this is one of, like, the hallway filling with blood is one of the most, like, iconic parts of this movie. And yeah, it's practical effects, and it's done very well. They definitely poured a lot of fake blood into that elevator, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
And I believe he also sees the two little girls.
Mm-hmm.
So he sees, like, these two little girls in matching dresses holding hands. And you realize this pretty early on, but back Jack's boss was, when he was telling the story of the man who murdered his family, the previous caretaker, you realize that man also had two daughters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the movie lets you on pretty quickly that there's definitely some ghost shenanigans going on here.
And then also because, Danny has this little episode with his visions, and then he faints. Wendy calls some lady to, like, talk about him and make sure that he's okay and check up on Danny. And she goes in this whole background about like why could this be happening? And we find out that Danny has a little man in his throat, or so he said.
A little boy in his throat.
Named Tony. And just gonna say, Tony's a bit scary.
Yeah.
Tony sometimes talks through Danny.
And whenever Tony's talking, Danny moves his finger.
Yep.
Um.
Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
Yeah, he puts on a voice, and Tony. He says Tony lives in his mouth. Tony is a little boy that lives in his mouth. And of course, when I was a wee lad, I also remember having a boy living in my mouth. Yeah, that's a pretty normal thing to say, right?
Definitely won't take that out of context later.
Oh, no.
But anyways, we, the lady's trying to figure out why Danny is doing all these things, and, he's like, oh, and he's, like, past psychological things that might have happened to him. And then we find out that, Danny hurt his elbow. Or shoulder.
Yeah, shoulder.
Excuse me. And, they're like, oh, how'd that happen? And it's like, well, one night, Jack came home a little too drunk, and yanked Danny up with his arm, and then it just went, and he got hurt.
Yeah, he dislocated his shoulder because his father, yanked on his arm too hard. And
then we find out that because of that, Jack said he swore off drinking, and, he's like, Wendy, if I ever drink again, leave me.
Yes. So you find... And then
hasn't had a drink since.
Yeah, find out that he hasn't had a drink in 5 months. So, you realize that he had a problem with alcohol. You realize that this father had a problem with alcohol, and that he, but now he is sworn off the bottle. And for about 5 months, he has been sober. Then, what happens? Flash forward. What happens next, Jace?
We're in the car, driving along to the hotel. Jack got the job. They're driving along. And then, like all loving families, they have a conversation about the Donner Party.
Yes.
Because ain't no party like a Donner Party.
No, it isn't a party if people don't eat each other.
I've always said that.
Yeah. That's always been a fact of life.
Anyways, they're rolling along through the mountains, and they're reminded of the Donner Party that got trapped there. And then, of course, the little Danny's like, what's the Donner Party? And so Jack has to tell him all about that, and he's like, no, I know all about cannibalism. I watched it on the TV.
Yeah. Jack's like, he watched it on the television.
Tour of the hotel from Ullman. And we get these really nicely done tracking shots throughout the hotel, and it we get a scope of the grandness of this building.
Yeah, so you got it's really well done tracking shots where they're just walking through and the camera's following them through obstructions and such things, and it's really well done. This is a movie where you can really appreciate the technical aspects done by the cinematographer and Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah. So then they go outside and check out the hedge maze, and we find out the hotel was built on an ancient Indian burial ground.
That was pretty
so,
ominous.
Ghosts!
Ghosts.
When in doubt, ghosts.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm a Wendy.
And then, keep going through the hotel. Then they're in like the ballroom area. And then, who do they meet, Nando?
In the barroom area?
Mm-hmm.
They meet the head chef. Correct?
Don't look at me.
Alright, so they meet this head chef. And, he introduces them. And, they're just slowly going through this, and then the head chef takes Wendy, and he takes Wendy and Danny, and he starts to show them around the kitchen. And you get another cool tracking shot throughout the kitchen, that you'll be reminded of later. And he's just walking through them, and then the head cook calls Danny Doc, which is strange because Doc is a nickname that Wendy has given Danny because of the old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way that the head cook should have known that he was called Doc, because Wendy never called him Doc in front of him. So, Wendy notes that. It's a little strange. But, she just brushes it off.
And then, Dick and Danny go and get some ice cream.
Yeah.
And they have a pretty interesting talk. Dick explains to Danny that they both have this gift, a gift that that he refers to as the Shining, which explains his little episodes with like the visions and the quote unquote Tony speaking through him.
Yeah,
this is what he calls the Shining, and they're able to Dick's able to talk to Danny through his mind, and he'd be like, "Hey, you want some ice cream, Doc?"
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Danny, he's trying to ask Dick. He's like, are you scared of this hotel? What's wrong with room 237? Danny's already getting these hints of something's off here. We shouldn't be here type of thing. So some bad stuff's gonna go down.
He kind of senses that something is wrong. And so he asks the head chef, Dick, he's like, "Hey, what's up with room 237? And then Dick's like, "Don't go into 237. Nothing's wrong there, but you have no business going in there."
Exactly.
And so Danny is told by the head chef, Dick, that room 237 is off limits. And then
we just get some more. A little bit more jump in time, and they're kind of just spending their days in the hotel. Jack's writing, and he's throwing balls off the walls, and Wendy and Danny are going to the hedge maze, having some fun in there.
Yeah.
Walking around. And I love the following shots of them in the maze.
Yeah. And an interesting thing about the maze is, as we said earlier, the inside of the hotel is kind of a maze. And that's kind of the comparison that you're supposed to make there. That while a hotel has the illusion of being mapped out, this hotel isn't really mapped out because it doesn't make physical sense from the outside. But opposed to this actual hedge maze, which is a maze, it's supposed to be confusing.
I feel like, if anything, that the hotel's supposed to be more of a maze to the audience.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the hedge is an actual maze.
And then we get this scene where Jack's looking over he's looking over a little model of the maze while Danny and Wendy are in the maze. And then we just get this like a giant zoom out from the top
Yeah.
of like them inside the maze,
Hmm.
and it's like so
Yeah.
because I'm pretty sure that was done with a miniature.
Yeah, it's a good like miniature work. I think it's done cleverly because you can see that Wendy is wearing like a brightly colored, I believe it's a red jacket. So if the miniature actually stands out, like you can tell it's Wendy in her red jacket. It's a clever way of making her miniature stand out.
You know, more hotel exploration from Danny. And as we talked about this earlier, but we get these shots of him on his big wheel tricycle going around the hotel.
Yeah.
And
on this really iconic carpet, I'll add.
yeah. And it's just, we're at these low, we're like at the same level as he is. The camera's at this low angle following him. And it's just so neat how it's done. And I've always loved the little hints of when he's riding on the carpet, and then he'll be going on the carpet, and then he'll just have to, you know, go across the wood floor, and then you'll get that sound of him, like the thud. Yeah. And I think the sound design there is like really well done, and it's just, you know, it would be silent riding across, and then dun, dun.
Also,
it's like
the score while he's riding around in his tricycle is done really well. You know, it has this like ominous, haunting tone going throughout when you're on like the lower level following his tricycle. It's done really well. Yeah.
And we see him walk up to this room, and we see that it's room 237, the one that Dick was obviously a little weary about.
Telling him not to go in there.
And Danny's curious.
Danny certainly is. He's a curious little fellow. So, yeah. So, Danny, you see that he kind of stops in front of 237, and he gets up and he tries to open the door. But the door is locked. Both of the doors are locked, in fact.
So he gets back on his big wheel and keeps riding.
Gets back on his... Yeah, okay, Chase. Why don't you go into the next scene where Jack is riding?
Oh, well, you know, Jack... This is later in the night. And Jack's just trying to ride, and then Wendy, out of nowhere, just comes up and interrupts him when he's trying to work. Real jerk-like. Obviously, I'm kidding. You know, Jack is talking about, like, hey, this is my time, I'm working right now, you know. You need to realize that whenever I'm in here and I'm typing or whatever the fuck you hear, it means I'm working. So don't come in. And she's just like, hey, man, I just want to give you some sandwiches. But the way Jack Nicholson conveys Jack Torrance's anger in this movie through different stages. There's obviously when he's like batshit crazy at the end, and then it builds very well Jack's frustrations and how he gets to where he gets.
Yeah.
You can see his anger start building.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think even early on, you know that he's never really, like, I don't want to say, like, not liked Danny, but, like, tell that Danny's been a pain in his side?
Yeah, I guess.
Because, like, I don't know if you'd say, like, hurting Danny was intentional there, but there's also some faint allusions in the movie to Jack sexually harassing Danny, and it's just it's not good there between them, and it's like, why is he even in that situation?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And then what happens?
So after, after he sends Wendy out. Wendy, it's snowing. You get a little scene of, it's snowing outside. So you get a little scene of Wendy and Danny outside in the snow. And they're just playing around, and then you get this really iconic shot. It's kind of like a zoom in onto Jack's face. And he just has kind of like it's a spooky expression on his face, and
it's definitely an evil grin type of thing.
Yeah. And the shot gets they just kind of hold this shot, and it's definitely spooky.
I mean, here's a question for you. Like, at what point do you feel like... Because, like, I feel like right when they get there, like, the hotel's starting to influence him.
Yeah.
And, like, Grady is starting to influence him. But at what point do you feel like he's really, lost it, Like, there is no going back type of thing. Like, he's really snapped.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you feel like it's, like, right there where he's, like, that grin is starting, or do you feel like that's just... has nothing to do with that? Like, where do you feel like he's starting to...
I mean, yeah. We learn later on in the movie what he's actually writing. But I think the ghost definitely influenced him very early on. It's definitely... Yeah, I think he snaps pretty early on, but he's still trying to hold on. So, I definitely think he gets an influence very early.
I mean, and I'm not saying Jack's a good guy. But it's definitely obviously being influenced by Grady.
And the ghosts. So, after that, Wendy enters back into the hotel. And then she enters back into the hotel, and she calls she tries to call somebody, but it doesn't work. So she gets on the radio and she calls like some guards, I suppose. I don't know exactly what they do, but she calls on the radio. She calls like these guards, and she asks like what's going on with the phone lines, and they tell her that like, oh,
there's a storm a-brewing.
Yeah, there's a huge snowstorm happening, and it's gonna happen very soon, and that some of the phone lines are down, and that they're not going to be repaired until like spring.
Which may or may not be a problem later.
So, So the majority of the phone lines are down, so they basically can only use the radio. And what happens after that?
Cut back to Danny in the hallways. Who does he see? But some twin girls, and these girls are being so nice, wanting Danny to come play with them, and he denies. They're asking, "Come play with us, Danny," and obviously, he is horrified by this and scared, and he goes off because he sees images of them regular and then all bloodied.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, and then Danny and Wendy are watching TV, and he wants to go. Danny wants to go get his little toy truck, um, and it's up in the room, and he's asking Wendy if he can like go up there, but she's like, no, your dad's sleeping, and then eventually she's like, okay, just make sure you're really quiet. So he goes into the room, but Jack is awake, and he looks you could tell he's really tired, and they sit side by side and they have this conversation, and there's just something so creepy about the way Jack looks at Danny, and he's like, oh, I'd do anything for you, you know?
Yeah. And even the way that, like, when Danny enters the room, Jack is just sitting on the bed. He's just, like, staring off into nothingness. You can tell the ghosts are definitely in his head here. He's starting to crumble. Or, I mean, he's pretty much already crumbled at this point. And they have, yeah, as you said, they have this really, like, weird interaction where he's like, oh, I'll do anything for you. And he keeps repeating that. It's very creepy.
Which is immediately followed, like, right after by that, we get that scene where he's having a nightmare at the desk. And,
oh, yeah.
he's screaming, and so Wendy, obviously comes over to check. And he's like, I had this horrible nightmare that I killed you and Danny.
Yeah. So, he's screaming in his sleep. He's having nightmares about murdering his family. Not the best kind of dreams. Ghosts are definitely messing with his head. Right before that nightmare scene, we get a scene with Danny. He's just sitting on the floor with that iconic carpet, playing with his toys. And then he notices a ball rolls toward him. So he looks up and he sees that nobody threw him this. And he looks around and he sees that room he wasn't supposed to go into, the door's unlocked with the key in there. The camera.
Yeah, and he comes back to them with bruises.
Yeah.
And so obviously they're pretty concerned. And they're like, well, then someone else has to be in the hotel.
Well, yeah. Originally, Wendy, like, grabs Danny, runs out of the room, and she's, like, screaming back at Jack. She's like, you did this! She accuses him at first. And that doesn't make him too happy. And then she runs away with Danny. And then, Jack starts to just wander around, and then he walks into this, I guess it's some kind of ballroom with a bar.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Lloyd.
So yeah, Jack just walks in. He sits down at the bar, and keep in mind it was established earlier that Jack had a problem with alcohol, but he's sworn off the bottle.
Also, it's stated very early that there's going to be there's no alcohol there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when Lloyd gives him this drink, did he happen to find alcohol just somewhere stashed in the hotel, or is this just all in his head? He's not
alcohol.
Even really drunk. Manifesting alcohol.
Yeah, so Jack sits down and it's an empty bar, but then this guy dressed in like a tuxedo, he's just there. Lloyd the bartender,
played by Joe Turkel.
Yeah, they have kind of like this friendly conversation. Jack gets his drink, and Jack seems kind of oddly like leery. He's just acting strange. But then,
well, it's almost like they just know each other.
Yeah.
Like they've met before, And this is kind of just like, oh, well, Lloyd, good to see you. Another drink.
And another thing is that Lloyd's movements are like oddly this his movements are creepy. Like he doesn't really move around, and when he does, it's kind of like slowly in like a stoic manner. It's just something that stuck out to me. And you can definitely tell that now Jack is fully interacting with the ghosts. Like Jack's going off the deep end now. Well then Wendy runs into the bar. And when Wendy runs in, this is just an empty bar. Nobody's there. And she runs in, she tells Jack like, "Oh, somebody else is in the hotel. Danny told me that somebody else is here. That's who hurt him." And so Jack is just like, "That's not possible." But then he goes to check it out. And
Yeah, I mean, she never goes into the ballroom area. It's just like she tells him that there's someone else in the hotel in room 237.
mm-hmm.
So Jack has to go up there and investigate.
Yes.
And then we get Nando's favorite scene.
No. But right before that scene, you get this. You cut to the head cook.
Dick.
Yeah, Dick. So you cut to him, and he's just in his own house. But yeah, it was established earlier that Danny and him kind of share like this shine power. So he can sense that something is going to be wrong. So we cut to that. He looks very distraught. But then we get to this scene. Chase, why don't you walk us through the bathroom scene?
Well, Jack goes into room 237, and he sees this bathroom, this nice green shade, and a naked woman pops out of the tub.
Yeah.
As you'd expect. And Jack is it's like, all right, my luck's turning up.
Yeah.
And they start kissing, but then she turns into a rotting old lady corpse.
Yeah, and she starts cackling.
It is not very pretty. It is probably the most horrifying image in the movie.
Yeah.
Seeing the welches and rotting flesh of her body.
Not a great sight.
So anyways, Jack freaks out and like hits her back and then leaves the room.
Yeah.
And it's just it's the way it's shot is very like,
yeah, it's very,
because she pops from behind the curtain, and it's like, it's kind of seductive at first until he's already too close and he's literally in her hands, and then it's like, what the fuck, she's rotting all over me.
Yeah. And like as you said, this is shot very well. Like when he walks in, it's almost completely silent. And
Kubrick's really good at close-ups of the face, and just people like staring and gazing off.
He just walks in, it's completely silent. The bathroom is like mostly green. It has a very nice aesthetic. And you just get her as she like pulls back the shower curtains, and then she just kind of like gets up and gets out. It's shot very well. There's some nice close-ups, and yeah, it definitely has a feeling of like anxiety or suspense.
Anyways, after that traumatic event, Jack needs another drink.
Yeah.
And this time there's more people. There's a whole party. Some would say it's a great party.
Yes.
But anyways, he goes back to talk to Lloyd, and as he's talking, he gets up, and then someone spills a drink on him.
Yeah.
So he has to go to the bathroom and wash up, and then who does he meet, Nando?
Well, he meets the previous the previous caretaker of this hotel. You know, the man in the story that murdered his wife and kids. Bananas.
Grady.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, he meets a man called Grady, and Grady's he's like this, like a waiter at this party. And you know, him and Grady are talking, and you know, once Grady tells Jack his name, he's like, "Oh, you were the previous caretaker."
Yeah, he's like, you killed your wife and kids and offed yourself.
Yeah, but Grady tells him, he's like, "Oh, I corrected them."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very he seems to be very nonchalant about murdering his wife and kids.
He's just trying to make it a justifiable thing.
And
I love I love how just like I love the icon, like the bathroom is just bright red,
yeah.
and it's an iconic thing. It stands out. The
Also,
same thing, you know, this red bathroom, the green bathroom from earlier.
Also,
These beautifully framed shots of the hotel.
there's also these really good close-ups of just them talking to each other. It just makes the conversation so much more like impactful. And
You should say that's another thing that I love about this movie is the script. I think it's just so brilliant, and there's little hints of foreshadowing. And I know that obviously this isn't too direct to the book, and you know Stephen King infamously wasn't the biggest fan of this movie, but I still think you can enjoy both of them as separate pieces of art.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as a greater whole.
Yes. I think that, as you told me, there are definitely differences in the movie and book, so I think, yeah, you can enjoy them both as standalone pieces.
Tell that to Stephen King.
Yeah, Stephen King, not very happy with this. But he learns from this waiter man that he learns that the head cook Dick is he learns that he's coming up.
Yeah. Well, he's been trying to call them and ring them up, but since the storm and all that, and the phones are down, and the radio's acting weird.
He's just trying to check on the family, specifically Danny.
Out of all times for ghost things to go down, of course, it's going to be when there's a big storm and the phone lines aren't up.
Yeah.
So.
Ghost shenanigans tend to happen when phone lines are down. So.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, he tells him that Dick is coming up, and he tells him that he needs to correct his family.
And thus, the deed must be done.
The deed has to be done here.
So, Wendy discovers the fact that, Jack has been riding. Something might be a little up, because all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah.
And,
she just discovers this, hundreds of pages, just they're all in different patterns, and it's just the same phrase, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And she's obviously creeped out. And something interesting is that Stanley Kubrick himself typed out all those pages, and all those pages were real and had the same phrase.
Don't close his door.
Christ, I'm recording something. Hold on. Yeah, so Stanley Kubrick had to do those himself. And that's a very interesting fact.
Then we get this scene that's it's pretty memorable and quotable for me when she's got the bat and they're going back and forth and they start walking up the stairs and he's like, Wendy, I'm not gonna hurt you. Just gonna bash your brains in.
Yeah.
And like this is the point where you know
he's gone off the deep end.
There's no going back. He's
fully committed.
The look on his face as he's, following her up the stairs, and it's just like it's like a disgusting like predator after prey type of feel.
Yeah, exactly.
You see this look on Shelley Duvall's face, and if you read some of the stuff from behind the scenes, she was practically tormented by Kubrick to get these almost genuine reactions, and it's just like she is so frightened, and she's got to deal with this guy.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson does a very good job of portraying this unhinged guy.
It boggles my mind how this movie was nominated for Razzies in 1980 and practically panned when it came out. It's just, I don't know. Thinking on it now,
Yeah, it's that's kind of crazy to think about. And so Wendy's kind of swinging at him with this bat, and eventually she gets him. She kind of knocks him in the head, and he falls down the stairs.
Pratfall.
Yeah, that definitely looked like it hurt in the movie.
And she lugs him all the way to the freezer.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what I'm thinking is, yeah, he's like kind of unconscious, but he's still spouting nonsense.
Yeah, he's kind
so
of.
I'm thinking in my head, I'm thinking like, would she really be able to take him all the way to the freezer in that time before he was able to get back up?
Yeah.
And maybe hit her again.
I mean, he only really tries to get back up once they're actually there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she drags him in, and he's kind of incoherent right now. So he starts, and eventually she throws him in, and then as he's getting up, she locks the door.
Little pigs, let me out.
Yes. And I think one of my favorite things about this movie is their interactions. Especially when
their loving family reaction.
Especially when Jack is unhinged and he's actively trying to murder them. I really like their interactions. It's one of my favorite things about this movie. Because sure, this guy might be an unhinged murderer, but he's still cracking jokes while doing it.
Oh yeah, there's definitely dark comedy in there.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite aspects of the movie. And so he tries to reason with her through the door. And he's like, if you let me out now, I'll forget all about this.
Yeah.
But obviously she's like, yeah, I'm out. And then she leaves.
Anyways, we see that Dick is starting to pull up to the hotel. And then also Danny is he's in the room, and then he starts shouting, "Red rum, red rum."
Red rum. Our favorite kind of rum.
My favorite drink. Now, those of you unaware, red rum is murder backwards.
Yeah. And a thing that I really like about this is that Danny ends up writing red rum on a door, backwards, and so
then it's reflected in the mirror.
Yeah. And also,
Kubrick uses mirrors really well.
Yeah.
In this scene, because there's one scene where earlier that Jack and Wendy are talking, and then it's just we see Jack talking, but the camera is showing it through the reflection of the mirror.
Yeah.
And it's
just a creative way to use mirrors.
You were saying?
So like in past scenes of the movie, especially during like like when Danny's having like these interaction with ghosts, and you get like these flashing images. You actually see this door with red rum written on it, and then he actually writes it out. That's something I really liked. It's like a nice
Well,
little.
yeah, because all the visions he has, like we eventually see.
Yeah.
We see the bloody elevator. We see the butchered girls.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that stuff might not go well for Dick.
Yeah, he's aware. Oh, it's gonna happen.
And Danny is holding this. It's pretty big knife.
Yeah, like a big old
And
kitchen knife.
And you said it when we were watching, but he's holding it. The way he holds it is so. It's so strange. Like, I don't know if it was intentionally done character wise or if it was just like. I'm assuming it was a real knife, but I'm just like, they were like, all right, look, be very careful. Hold it like this. Do not move at all.
Yeah, like his movements are almost robotic, and I don't because like it's I don't know if as you said, I don't know if it was done intentionally or not, but his movements actually add to the thing because obviously he's got Tony messing with him, and that's why he's writing red rum, and maybe Tony's like changing up his movements almost as if Tony's possessing him, or Stanley Kubrick was just like, hey kid, be careful with this knife, don't move it at all.
Yeah.
But I think it's I really like that aspect. And then we get to probably the most famous scene in this movie.
Yes, been parodied and referenced so many times in other works.
Yeah. Why don't you walk us through this scene?
Well, so Jack comes back up and he's got an axe, and so Wendy and Danny go and hide in the bathroom, and they try and go out through the window, and it can only open up a certain amount because it's frozen, it's winter storm, and Danny is able to successfully go out through the window, but of course Wendy's too big to go through, so she has to stay in the bathroom and just hold off on her own.
Yeah.
And what I love about this scene is when Jack is going back and forth between swinging the axe into the door, the camera isn't following Jack. The camera is following like the head of the axe. It's following the blade back and forth.
It's kind of like jerking back and forth.
It's almost disorienting.
Mm-hmm.
Disorienting to a certain point.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So he cuts through this door, and we get these terrified reactions of Wendy, and then we get the iconic line, "Here's Johnny,"
Yeah.
which of course is a play on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson back in the day, and one of the most famous horror lines of all time, probably.
Yeah, and Wendy is she's just screaming her head off. Like, the screams feel really authentic and real.
Well, yeah, and then when Jack, sticks his hand through to the other side of the doorknob, since she has a knife, she's able to, slash his hand a bit.
Yeah. So, she slashes his hand, and he hears, because Dick is like right outside the hotel now in his little like snowmobile thing, and so Jack hears this and he's like, "Who's here?" And he leaves Wendy alone and he like walks out, and then Dick he walks into this hotel and he just starts like shouting throughout the whole hotel. He's like, "Is anybody here?"
And then, surprise, axe to the gut.
Jack like pops out behind this pillar and like axes Dick in the gut.
I guess you could say I was completely gutted by his death
Yeah.
when he died.
I feel really bad for Dick because like he went out of his way to show up to check on Danny and then just
Oh, you knew something was gonna happen.
Yeah.
It was.
But then like he doesn't even get like a heroic death or anything. He just gets axed in the main lobby.
I mean, and this is another thing. This movie isn't even that violent. There aren't a lot of deaths.
No, they're not. Like
And
how many deaths are there in this movie? Like of actual people?
I mean, that we see happen.
Yeah.
Two.
Yeah, it's
I
just
think Dick and Jack.
yeah. It's literally there's two like actual human deaths.
And then if you want to count the bloodied girls in the hallway,
4.
but it's like, and Jack just freezes to death. So
Yeah. And so yeah, Dick gets he gets chopped in the kitchen, and so Wendy walks out of the door, and she's trying to get out. She knows that he's distracted, so she's running about, and eventually, you get this kind of weird because she walks up some stairs and she sees a man, I believe in a bear costume.
yeah,
And
most out of left field scene.
And you also he's on top of another man, like a ghost. There's
Well, say it as it is. It's a blowjob.
Yeah, there's no context for this one, and I remember when we were watching this movie, you're like, oh, that'd make more sense in the book.
Yeah, because I don't remember exactly. It's been a while since I've read the book, but the man in the suit is supposed to be the owner of the hotel, of the Overlook. And in the book, Jack's more obsessed with trying to meet the owner and find out who the owner is and all that. And this guy in the bear suit is a suitor of him to say, and
Yeah.
spooky bear blowjob.
Definitely a strange scene.
Definitely that might be the most uncomfortable scene of the movie, to be honest.
Oh, it's definitely one of them. So yeah. So then we cut to Danny ran outside, and he's trying to hide, but then eventually Jack finds him, and so Danny just darts over to the hedge maze, and Jack follows him, and so Danny's just running through this hedge maze. And the thing I want to point out is that the hedge maze covered in snow looks very beautiful. And it's also very dark because the only light is coming from these small little lamps hidden throughout. And since you're in a hedge maze, it creates kind of like a claustrophobic feeling, almost.
Well, I mean, it's already hard enough to find your way in a hedge maze on its own, but then you got layers of snow as well.
Yeah.
And practically darkness. It makes it that much tougher and disorienting to why can't I say that word today? You know what I mean.
Yeah.
To go through. And as the camera goes back and forth between cuts, you get lost which way you're going.
So, Danny's running from Jack in this hedge maze. And then we cut back to Wendy, who's running through the hotel trying to find an exit. And she comes across this room filled with skeletons. And obviously it's the ghosts messing with her, because the ghosts aren't afraid of hiding anymore. They're just full on out now that Jack's gone crazy.
Cobwebs.
Yeah, cobwebs and skeletons. So then we cut back to Danny in this maze, and he's still running, but he tries this trick in which he follows back in his footsteps. He's trying to throw off Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Very clever. All right.
So after going through the maze after a while, Jack's been cut. He's wobbling, um, practically like falls, and he freezes to death.
Yeah.
And we get this. I love this shot of him, of his frozen corpse at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the the expression on his face I find so funny.
Yeah.
But at this,
Not the best face to die on. Not the best.
um,
And so, Danny makes it out. He like tricks Jack, and he makes it out, and him and Wendy reunite. And then Jack falls over, and you cut to a shot, and it's morning, and he's just frozen to death.
and then for the final scene, we get this brilliant zoom in onto a photograph on the wall in the overlook. And then, would you look at that? There's a party. And in that party was Jack. And so it kind of, it makes us wonder, like, because this photo was taken so long ago.
Yeah, it was March
this was
21.
Yeah, this was the the ballroom party he was at. But obviously all these people were dead. So it's kind of like Jack's always been a part of this hotel.
Yeah. He would inevitably come to this hotel, go crazy, and then join the ghosts.
Yeah.
Which is something that would have happened no matter what. So the last shot of this movie is it's just a picture with Jack on it, and it's marked 1921. So
Which obviously the movie doesn't take place in 1921, but that's when the big party was.
So yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that Jack has now joined the ghosts at this hotel. And
He's
then,
kind of like, I don't even know if you'd say join, more like taking over that spot that Grady once had, or
yeah. He's just become now when a new caretaker.
he is one with the hotel.
Yeah. Now when a new caretaker is supposed to come in, they're gonna tell him the story of Jack Torrance, how he tried to murder his family.
And then obviously oh, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, we cut to the credits. That's how the movie ends. You go.
Oh, I was gonna say obviously there's a sequel that came out, Doctor Sleep, based on the novel of the same name, which stars Ewan McGregor as an older Danny, and we could probably talk about that on hopefully another episode in the future.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah.
Definitely interested to see how an older Danny. I'm definitely see where the story goes.
It's certainly it's its own story.
Yeah.
And believe me, I was as hesitant as anybody when I heard they were making a sequel to The Shining.
Yeah. So,
I guess we should wrap up with some final thoughts.
Yeah, some closing thoughts. This is your favorite movie, so why don't you go first?
Oh, joy. What is there to say that hasn't been said so many times already about this movie? I think Jack Nicholson's performance in this movie is one of the best of all time. I don't really think there's a bad performance in this movie. I think Stanley Kubrick's direction is amazing as always. The way he can move a camera is incredible. The score of this movie is haunting and beautiful, and it's just, there's so many things in this movie I love. You can see it multiple times and pick up new little details. I would recommend, if you really enjoy this, checking out the documentary Room 237. Kind of explores some theories about the movie, and some of them can be a little outlandish, but it's, still I find it fascinating. And it's just it's an iconic horror film.
Yeah. as for my closing thoughts, viewing this movie for the first time, I went in knowing that it was it's very highly acclaimed and very influential movie. And I can say that my expectations were met. It definitely lives up to its reputation. I think all the performances in this movie are really good. I think Stanley Kubrick's direction, especially the way he frames shots, like there's so many iconic shots and iconic scenes in this movie, and that's mostly due to Stanley Kubrick. And he's very creative with this movie. Like, for example, the camera following the axe head on the swings to make the swings feel more impactful is really creative. All the actors are doing a really good job. Even the child actor for Danny, he's doing pretty good. And this is just a really solid movie. I don't really think I can think of any complaints for this movie. I think everything in this film is done well.
I mean, and I could hear some people say that maybe it'd be a little standoffish because of the length. It's almost like 2.5 hours, but I feel like it never drags.
Yeah, the pacing in this movie is pretty good.
Yeah.
Alright, now with those closing thoughts, let's move on to the ratings.
Jeez. Oh boy, I sure wonder what my rating would be.
What would you rate The Shining, Chase?
Drum roll, please. My rating of The Shining is going to be a 1.5. No, I'm joking. It's going to be a 10 out of 10.
Very high praise.
The first
10 out of 10 on CNC Movie Breakdowns ever.
Sound the alarm. It has happened.
It's happened.
These are going to be rare, believe me.
As for my rating, I think it's a really, really good movie, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Alright.
Wow. 9 out of 10. Very high praise indeed.
Yeah. Alright. If you've listened this far, we'd like to thank you for listening. It means a lot.
If you've listened this far, please like, please subscribe, please do all that shit that other people usually tell you to do, because, hey, that helps. What are we going to be talking about next time?
Next time we're going to be talking a more modern horror. This one came out a few years ago. We're going to be talking about Don't Breathe, the 2016 film. It's, I liked this movie, but you've never seen it.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is another milestone. This is the first movie we're talking about that I haven't seen.
Yeah, I think you're going to like it. It's pretty solid.
The only thing I know about this movie is that Stephen Lang plays a blind guy, and that it was directed by Fede Alvarez, who did the Evil Dead remake.
Yeah. So,
and that's all I know.
With that, everyone, we'd like to thank you for watching. Have yourself a good day. Goodbye.
And remember, Red Rum. Red Rum.
Red Rum.
Red Rum.
Red Rum.